To understand the magnitude of my story, you must know who I am. So here's a little backstory. I was born in 1954, so my formidable years were spent growing up under the influence of the 60s and early 70s in a very small town in upstate Ohio. When I say small, I mean one light at Broadway in Maine. There was about 40 businesses in the centre of town. The drugstore soda shop was right in one of these corners. There was also a hardware store, small grocery store, a Ben Franklin's, gas station, barber shop. We had a Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran and Catholic churches, and almost everyone went to one of them weekly. You get the picture. It was Mayberry. We also had a library, a post office and the jail. The jail was set up so you could easily sneak right past the cop desk 9 times out of 10 to see if anyone was in jail. If there was, we would run errands for them, go get cigarettes, whatever. We never bothered to ask, what are you in for? Kids, right? I was a curious, free-spirited, and completely wild and innocent child. A little bit later came the assassination of JFK, the civil rights movement, the Vietnam protests, and the hippie revolution, which I joined because I'm becoming one of those earliest hippies. So, maybe now you can guess where the story is leading. Hitchhiking was commonplace in those years, so I did a lot of it. For a little over 3 years, I made many trips all over the US and Canada, to much of the dismay of my mother. Sometimes I took friends, sometimes I went alone. Always with no money, no clothes, and no worries. So many people tried to warn me off the dangers, being very young and naive, and feeling quite invincible. I ignored all of their well-meaning advice. This wasn't my first trip, nor was it the last, but it was the most memorable, and now you'll understand the gravity of this very close call. June 1969. I was 14. I was spending the night with my friend, Dina, who lived in the neighboring mirrored town. I talked her into coming to San Francisco with me. She just happened to have a brother living out there that she had not seen in a while. So we headed out across the cow pasture to the highway and stuck out our thumbs. It never took long to get a ride, as you can probably imagine. We received many rides. A band tour bus picked us up on the way to a gig in Chicago, but we didn't want to make that big of a detour, so we passed. I can't remember who this band was. I remember another ride when we got into a convertible, Cadillac, with 4 black men and went to a party in Blacktown, Columbus, Ohio. We were the only white people at this party, and let me tell you, we had a blast. I had never felt unwanted or in danger. In fact, the nice lady that lived in the apartment gave me a shirt which I thought was so kind. Now, as an adult, I realized she was trying to cover me up. God bless her. The next ride was pretty cool, until he picked up another hitchhiker, a lone guy, who kept nagging him about how much trouble he was going to be in if he got caught taking these 2 underage girls across state lines. I became very agitated and told him to shut up. We should have gotten out then, but we stayed. He wasn't dangerous, just annoying. Well, the driver stopped for gas in Iowa, and Dina and I went into the restroom to freshen up. When we came out, the cops were waiting for us, and we ended up in Iowa City Jail. I'm sure our parents were contacted immediately, although I do not recall this. We were quite the attraction in this little jail. The cops would come and talk to us and play cards. They would bring us cigarettes, candy, and donuts. Another Mayberry. I don't think we were there for too long before Dina's mum had driven out to pick us up, and after a conversation with her daughter, she decided to drive us the rest of the way to California. That's just over 1,900 miles. Unbelievable. I remember singing to the radio all the way to Nevada. I especially remember the mamas and the papas. Are you going to San Francisco? Later, we booked into a hotel room in Reno. Boring. That's not what I signed up for. I tried to talk to Dina in just taking off. I realize now, as an adult, what a terrible selfish act that would have been, and how devastating that would have been for her mum. Luckily for everyone, she refused to do that. So I stayed. We finally ended up back in San Francisco, right after Haight-Ashbury near Berkeley College, where all the hippie action was, with her mum tagging along. It was also overwhelming to me. It was pretty cool for a little town, but this stuff was way out of my league. I did mention how very naive I was. I was not fully aware of the things like drug addiction, but I was at first hand in Needle Park. Seeing everyone strung out on drugs scared me to death. I saw other things too that I cannot mention. Needless to say, I was shocked. I wanted to go home, and I have never wanted to go back to California again, and I have never been back, even to this day. I don't remember how many weeks I was gone on that particular adventure, but shortly thereafter, I was home, watching TV with my mum. It was July, and it was all over the news about the Manson family and the infamous murders. I then realized how close I had come to being picked up by them and possibly becoming one of their family. What if I had taken off on my own looking for adventure and not stayed with Dina and her mum that night? Hitchhiking alone through the desert, 9 hours away from Spawn Ranch. What if that guy had not turned us into the cops in Iowa, and we would have been out there, the two of us? Mostly assured I, or both of us, wouldn't got picked up by them though. Later, I found out that the family were recruiting people from Haight-Ashbury, and also how irked I was because we couldn't lose her mum. Every day I'm thankful that I didn't get caught up in that. I was sure ripe for the picking, especially if they would have gotten a hold of me before I made it all the way to California. In all my adventures, I was never beat up, raped, or murdered. I really do believe that I was under divine protection.